turns out, aliens are real. Well, maybe. It's been a wild ride in the extraterrestrial appreciation community these last few years. We've seen this video of an unidentified object released by the US government, and this one. And as of a few days ago, the Mexican government has weighed in too. Kinda. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Why should you, dear viewer, care what I, a YouTube funny man and anime appraiser, has to say on what might be matters of cutting-edge science? Well, get a load of this. Amongst my 19,000 other titles, Architect of Blackest Fate, Master of the Skull Throne, Father of Kittens, is this Doctor of Life Sciences, from a real-ass, respectable institution of big brainery. So I'll wind the silliness back for a moment and lay out where we stand, much as you and I would dearly love to let our imagination run wild and accept what seems to be before us.
Aliens. Oh, sorry. I mean unidentified aerial phenomena.
We are obliged by the need for scientific rigor to always question everything thoroughly and accept it only when we have ruled out every plausible alternative. What is it that we see exactly? This is the gimbal tape, infrared sensor data from a US Navy flight taken in January 2015. What the hell is this? It resembles no aircraft, missile, balloon, or drone. It's also surrounded by what looks like some kind of distortion. It's most odd. It's an object, it's flying, and it's for sure unidentified. And that's really all that anyone seems able to say. Here's another apparently similar example. This footage comes from an infrared sensor on a US Customs and Border Patrol flight on approach to Rafael Hernandez Airport, Puerto Rico. Similar distortion around the object is apparent on close inspection. Whatever this is, it looks very much like it flies along at its own leisurely pace, unperturbed by little details like hitting the sea. What is this distortion? It looks uncannily like how light bends as it passes close by a black hole, as shown in this simulation. Plenty of obvious speculation flows from this point, but until more observations are made available to us, it will sadly remain just that. As of September 13th, 2023, an informal session held in the Mexican Congress building may give us a little more to sink our teeth into. These fellas, 20 of them, were presented to the world by a man named Jamie Mousen. Not only had he brought the guys themselves, but he brought carbon dating from the dig site, which put them at around 1,000 years old, and CT scans, and X-rays, and the results of a DNA sequencing run. Inside the abdomen, one of them had fallopian tubes and 3 egg-like embryos. The bones are hollow, like those of birds. Fused into the skin are metal implants of some kind, containing osmium and cadmium. This is an incredible find. But the DNA sequencing is where I have to start taking issue. Several samples were taken and subjected to a fairly standard short-read sequencing run, probably Illumina, the industry standard. They were then searched against the NCBI sequence database of all publicly known DNA sequences to find where they fit into the taxonomy or the tree of life. Upwards of 60% of these short sequences returned as unrecognizable against this database. This, at first, seems a very exciting result indeed. But sadly, it isn't. By all accounts, the carbon dating of these finds to around 1,000 years ago checks out. Over that time, any DNA present will have become extensively damaged by environmental conditions. If you collect the shredded DNA and feed it into a sequencer anyway, you get nonsense, which shows up in a taxonomic analysis as unidentifiable sequences. Perhaps more to the point, DNA sequencing may not be the right tool for the job. At least, the job of investigating it as a presumed alien life form. Investigating it as a terrestrial relic using DNA sequencing makes much more sense. All known life on Earth evolved from a single common ancestor, and so its genetic material, i.e. DNA, all works in essentially the same way. There are 4 chemical letters of any Earth life form's genetic code, and they always combine into 2 specific pairs. All DNA sequencing technology that exists today works with these 4 building blocks, or very minor variations of them. And why would it not? Literally every life form we know, up to this point, has used this code. There would be no point developing anything else. But there's a very real, and perhaps high, likelihood that life which evolved on another world would use different chemical building blocks in its genetic sequence. In an Earth-like chemical environment, there are certainly other, similar alternatives. Perhaps there would be no commonality with terrestrial life at all. Or perhaps there would, simply through convergent evolution. On Earth, there are a great many examples of isolated species which have reached strikingly similar solutions to similar problems. As a genetic replicator, DNA is a pretty good solution. It's far from impossible that early life on another world ended up operating on the same basic genetic chemistry, purely because it works and is available. And perhaps the same could be said for the basic human body plan, which the mummies clearly follow. If I may entertain some speculation, that seems towards the more unlikely end. We humans ended up at our body plan through a rather convoluted and atypical evolutionary path, going from small tree-climbing primate to bipedal endurance hunter on the savannah is probably not something that happens very often. But perhaps there are other routes to a similar body plan, and perhaps that body plan makes an unusually good basis for a sapient technological civilization. At this point, our sample size is 1, ourselves and the other hominid species who arose with us, and that's as far as reasonable confidence can take us. When we look closer at the anatomy of these mummies, though, things start to go more than a little haywire. These hip joints, for instance, don't articulate. The human equivalent here is a ball joint, capable of articulating along multiple directions at once. The alien hip joint here doesn't seem to be connected in any sensible way at all. These shoulder joints would be essentially solid. This alien can't shrug. These ribs are solid circular hoops of bone. Its chest can't expand and actively ventilate its lungs, unless its unlinked vertebrae allow them to expand and compress vertically, like an accordion. These finger bones in its hands are the wrong way round, and most damningly of all, its skull is quite plainly the brain pan of a llama or alpaca, though no explanation is yet apparent of how a facial structure was crafted into its rear end. So on balance, we have an extremely weird artifact of likely human origin. But why on earth would anyone make such a thing so many centuries ago? Maybe it's not quite so compelling a mystery as alien visitors, but surely you, dear viewer, must join me in finding it very nearly so. Overall, though I have serious doubts, I'm happy to say that the researchers presenting these mummies have made a commendable effort towards transparency. They haven't properly understood their sequencing results, but that's okay. They would hardly be the first researchers to do so. This is a highly rarefied field, and the people who do understand have now weighed in. They haven't published their results through the proper channels. But given how they would surely have been received, even if they'd dotted every I and crossed every T, I can't find it in my heart to blame them. However, in their place, I wouldn't have hesitated to write the papers anyway. Nonetheless, in fields as rife with bullshitters as sinology is, this makes for a pleasant change that I hope to see continued. In a land of tiny aliens, they stand proud and tall, at average human height. There's a few more questions I know you're dying to ask. Can you f*** the aliens? No, you'd split them in half. Can you smoke a big doobie with the aliens? Yes, but you'd die laughing. How many of them can you take in a fight? Now they're about the size of a 5-year-old, so you can use the link in the description to find out. So when all is said and done, are these alien mummies real? A more reasonable man would say, sadly, almost certainly not. But I am not a reasonable man, so they're real to me, damn it! Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I shall see you next time.